Hello everyone, Andy here, and here's what you can look forward to in today's episode. In today's episode, me and guest Ollie Kent play start bench trade with every starting quarterback in the NFL. Me and Ollie disagree about Brock Purdy.
No, I can't entertain that Brock Purdy led some mad shots. Christian McCaffrey was the MVP that year.
Ollie is shocked at my one season wonder claim about one quarterback.
Oh, come on, that's so hard considering what he did in that.
He is the Michu of the NFL. He is the one season wonder that we all love.
Incredible.
So watch the full episode for more debate like this. Hope you enjoy. Hello and welcome back to the Across the Pod NFL podcast. I am, as ever, your host, Andy Davis, and today's episode, we are redoing our start bench trade for quarterbacks episode we did a year ago. Before we get into our guest, let's head on to On This Day. Now, on this day in 1990, Deion Sanders became involved in a dispute with Chicago White Sox catcher Carlton Fisk, one of the most infamous incidents of Sanders' baseball career. And a year later, in 1991, the NFL owners agreed to add two teams in 1994, these being the Carolina Panthers and the Jacksonville Jaguars. And the likes of Julian Edelman, Doug Martin and Anthony Richardson were all born. Now, heading on to today's guest. He was here for the episode a year ago. With us today is Ollie Kent. Ollie, how are things?
Good, thanks, mate. How are things for you?
Yeah, all good. Can't complain. Had my first experience of BAFA live football on the weekend just gone. Went to watch the South Wales Warriors take on the Bristol Apache. And of course, yourself, Ollie, you've had a bit of an update yourself with your coaching career. Tell the audience about what your new role is.
Yeah, so I was hounded by Rob Smith, who'll happily admit it. He's DC over at London Blitz. I've come in as a linebacker coach for London Blitz midway through the season. But it's good to be on board. It's good to be back doing football.
And how have you found it so far?
Yeah, it's been great. I've been with the guys a couple of weeks. We had a good innings on Sunday. Shame about the result, but really positive. It's nice as well to coach adult ball and be in the sun rather than university ball where it's November and December and it's trouncing it with rain. So nice change.
I remember actually when I met you for the first time in person was at the Brighton Panthers American football university team. I remember that day I remember it was definitely wasn't warm, but I think it was dry. But I remember it not being maybe the best conditions to watch some action.
No, we got pretty lucky while we were down there, to be fair, I think I might have had one or two rainy games in 2 years.
I mean, yeah, so Brighton was pretty good for weather. I mean, I think it's got one of the least amount of days per year of rain in the UK, I think, out of all the cities and towns in the UK. I've got a feeling it's up there, one of the least days of rain a year. So, yeah, can't really complain about that. Now, we mentioned at the start of the episode, today's episode, we are doing a start bench trade episode with quarterbacks as we did 12 months ago. Now, we've got all 32 starting quarterbacks, but as we know, it's start bench trade, which means it's in threes, which means you have to have an extra person. So in total, I've gone for the quarterback battle with both Kenny Pickett and Joe Flacco as starters, but everyone else is just one from each team. So there was one I was a bit unsure about with the Steelers. Was it Mason Rudolph? Do I go Will Howard? But I figured that Mason Rudolph has a bit more leverage. And of course, by the time the season starts, it could be neither of them. So I thought I'd pick one of them. And then the other one really was the Saints. Do I pick Tyler Show or do I pick Spencer Rattler? Let's face it, Spencer Rattler, I've seen him play in the NFL. I wasn't that impressed, so I kind of left him out. Of course, no Aaron Rodgers at the moment. No Aaron Rodgers in this wheel of names. Yet to have a team, so can't put him in. But all the big names are going to be involved. Let's get started. Here we go. We're underway. Who is the first name to come out of this? Okay, so it is just about Jordan Love of the Green Bay Packers. Our next player is, sound has to be, trying to go to the sound at some point during the episode. The sound is a bit loud at the moment from the website. But our next guy is Dak Prescott. And then our final guy is going to be Sam Darnold. So we have Dak Prescott, Jordan Love, and Sam Darnold. Now, Ollie, I'll let you go first. Who's starting, who you benching, and who's being traded?
I think Jordan Love's the easy starter there. I think of the bunch, he's the best one there. I think he's proven himself the most with, Green Bay haven't exactly given him plenty of tools around him. They've always been a decent team roster-wise. But I think the reaction this year to drafting a wide receiver in the first round tells you all you need to know about how well equipped that team's been. So definitely Jordan Love. I think Sam Darnold and Dak Prescott's a bit of a tougher one. I think Sam Darnold's always benefited from, well, certainly last year in Vikings. I think, credit to him with the revival he's done of his career, right? I think he's benefited from good OC, play caller, good defense, and some good weapons. I think Justin Jefferson will make any sort of, QB look pretty good, to be honest with you. I don't think it's going to change too much in Seattle with the run game. I know they've had some changes up there. Again, it's going to be defense heavy. The division's going to be tough. And then I think Dak's fallen off. I think just for sort of maybe recency, I think, probably bench Sam and then trade Dak.
Interesting. So I have also gone for Love as my starter. I think he's proved the last couple of years to be the best out of the bench. But I'm going to put Dak on the bench because Darnold, although he was great in Minnesota, it is just one season. And let's face it, the first, 6 years of his NFL career as a quarterback, it hasn't been pretty. And I know he's been in bad situations, and Dak has been in a lot better situations than him. And they've really done nothing, either of them. But I just feel like, Darnold's been great, but it's just 1 year. Now, we've seen a lot of one-season wonders in the NFL, and I do fear he could be that. But we'll see in Seattle, but I don't see him having the same success with, when you're going from best receiver in the league to anyone else, it's always a downgrade with your weapons. And I don't think, the likes of Jackson Smith and Jigba, and they've lost DK Metcalf as well. I just don't think that receiver room is anywhere near as good as it was in the Vikings. I don't think that's going to help him at all. So, going to put Darnold. I'll trade Darnold and put Dak Prescott on the bench. So, let's head on to our next 3 quarterbacks. We had a bit of a spicy one last year. I think it was Joe Burrow and Matthew Stafford. So hopefully we'll get something similar this time around. So first up, we have Bryce Young. Next up, we have, who is next on this list? Oh, just almost got me. We've got Lamar Jackson as our second. Who is our third? Hopefully someone equally as good, and we'll get some interesting debate. Who is next? Is it Jaden Daniels? No, it is Russell Wilson. So we have Wilson, Young, and Lamar Jackson. I think that's pretty easy. I think you start Lamar Jackson, 2-time MVP, could have easily been 3-time MVP just recently, this recent season. Bryce Young is improving. I thought he really improved second half of the season. And Russell Wilson, let's face it, it's father time for him. He's at the end of his career. He's not been good the last 3 years. So I think for me, that's pretty easy. Start Lamar Jackson, bench Bryce Young, and trade Russell Wilson.
No, I completely agree. I think I said it on the last podcast as well. I think Lamar Jackson probably is lucky to have 2 MVPs. I'm not saying he shouldn't have one, but I think the other one was probably slightly not deserved. In that year, I can't remember who it was, but you have to check out the last time. But and I think, like I say, Bryce is at least showing promise. He's an ascending player, and Ross is just on the decline at the moment. Be lucky to get Ross a spot in New York.
I think he'll start. I think James Winston, as much as we love him, James Winston is not a guy you can rely on. Personally, I don't think at all to start a whole season. I think one-off games, like one in the snow last year against the Steelers, I think one-off game, he can win you a game. But I think if you take that away, he's not been good. And even at the Browns, he had that one game last year. But really, apart from that one game, he was pretty poor. So I think Wilson still has something. I don't think it's as good as Bryce Young or Lamar Jackson, but I do think Wilson still has something. But no, certainly for me, an easy trade. Now,
I think though with that, it'll be Jackson Dart who's the starter in New York, just with where he's been taken first round. But then also, if Dable and Joe Shoney can't make it work this year, they're gone, right? If they're 1-7 by the bye week or whatever, they're both gone. So their jobs are on the line. So they can't put their faith in Russell Wilson and say, yeah, we'll take 2-5, but we'll blame it on Russ. They made the franchise give up capital for Jackson Dart. They've got to play in. They've got to show something with it.
I'm pretty sure that I read an article somewhere that they were going to bench him or redshirt him for the whole year. I think I read somewhere they were looking to have him sit the whole year. I heard.
I just can't buy that with where that franchise is. They might want to do that, but I just don't think they're going to be in a position where that's a luxury to do.
Yeah, I mean, I can see the way going. If they did have that plan of redshirting him and having, Russell Wilson, James Winston, with how that New York media is, how the fans are, I could easily see a case where if they both are struggling by week 9 or week 10, the pressure from the fan base and the media is just going to be insane. And he may almost be forced to start Jackson Dart. But then again, if they get to like week 12 and now only won 2 or 3 games, then they might think, you know what, let's go and get another stud in the draft. Let's get another top receiver or another. So they could do that as well. So who knows? But let's move on to our next 3 quarterbacks. Let's see who we get now. Our first name off the board is it going to be Drake May or Geno Smith? It looks like it's Drake May, who is the first off the board. Now, this website, I keep pressing the volume down, but it keeps, for some reason, still playing that. Can you hear that? Can you hear that?
No, I can't hear a picture.
Oh, fair enough. Then maybe it's just me, but yeah, it's awfully annoying because I keep pressing the volume down, and I was worried it was going to affect the recording. But our next name is up, and we have another rookie from last year in Caleb Williams. So 2 of the last year's rookie class. Are we going to get Jaden Daniels and make it 3 out of 3? Let's have a look. Almost, but it's Jalen Hurts. We have Jalen Hurts, Caleb Williams, and Drake May. Ollie, over to you first.
I think, this is a tough one. So I personally don't think that Jalen Hurts is an elite QB, right? I think he's a pretty good QB. I'd put him in the same sort of bracket as a Brock Purdy, slightly above, to where actually
that is harsh.
But it's good QB play. Yeah, it's not bad QB play, but the roster building around them is just exceptional, right? I do think that there's a lot of QBs who could be put in that situation and would also prosper. I think the other 2 you just mentioned there, Drake May and Caleb Williams, I think they potentially be able to get to the Super Bowl with those kind of teams as well. I think Jalen's probably slightly better than you've got to give him the edge over the other 2, just off the season they've had, and obviously he's Super Bowl champion. I think Drake May for me, I'd bench and I'd get rid of Caleb Williams. I just think, as bad as Chicago's been from a team building perspective as well and stuff like that, I think Drake May did pretty well with what he was left with. I think it's going to be interesting with both have got new coaches, new philosophies. It'll be interesting to see.
I thought this about Hurts for a long time, that maybe he was helped by this, but I think the performance he did in that Super Bowl, I'm fully aware that it should have been someone on defense, like a Josh Sweat, that should have won the MVP. But regardless, I think that throw he made to Devonta Smith at a really important point of that game, and it was still fairly tight, just sort of almost create that gap in the scoreline, which the Chiefs never really recovered from. I think that.
I just think though But look, you start seeing the names that are on that offense other than Jalen Hurts, right? Okay. The O-line has got like 3 All-Pros on it. Yeah. It's got Saquon Barkley running the ball. Okay. You've got A.J. Brown and you've got Devontae Smith, right? I don't care who you are at QB. That is an unreal plethora of talent.
But to be fair, you think Mahomes is probably the anomaly because he has made it work with subpar receivers like Kadarius Toney, like Judas.
You still have Kelsey though.
Yeah, but not quite, that same level. But I think most quarterbacks who win stuff have got a good line. They've got a good receiver. They've got a good coach. They've got a good defense. I mean, I can't think of many quarterbacks that have won Super Bowls really with a bad O-line, with a bad, receiving core. I think most years you look at it, it's very rare I found the quarterback has done it without that weapon. You saw what happened with Patrick Mahomes in 2 Super Bowls now. You get a bad O-line, that's what happens in the Buccaneers and Eagles losses. So I think that even though I get your point, I still do think that hurts. It's like every other quarterback that's won Super Bowls, they have everything around. That's what makes teams win Super Bowls. You can't win Super Bowls if there's different areas that are bad. Every Super Bowl team needs every different asset. So that's why it's so hard to win back-to-back, because you need every single part of the team, offense, defense, and special teams, to be functioning.
No, agreed. And then for me, I think just Caleb, and it's hard with Caleb and Drake. Obviously, they're only 1 year together, but I think Drake had the better year. So yeah.
See, I've gone for benching Williams and trading May. Now, there's many reasons for this. Firstly, I think really it's a toss-up. I think they both had fairly. I think May had a better year, but I think I saw more potential in Williams. I think Williams did well considering how bad that O-line was. I mean, he was the 3rd most sacked quarterback ever in a single season. But the reason I've gone for him benching rather than trading is because after those reports I saw recently coming out of him potentially not wanting to play for the Bears, not listening to people, not watching film, I think, who's going to want to trade for him? Like, no one's going to want to go for him. So I think on that sense, May's got more market value, and maybe I'll get rid of May. But for me, that's a toss-up. I think I could easily have either of them benching or trading. So I think, for me, that was a hard one. But I think, no one's going to want Williams after those reports. I mean, as a coach, Ollie, what's your reaction on that? Because to see that and hear those reports can't be a good thing to hear.
Well, I think it's 50-50, to be fair. I think, the Bears have notoriously been not a fantastic organisation, right, historically. I think a lot of that as well has come from his dad, right? So not necessarily to say it's come from Caleb. But there's reports in there about no one's in there to watch film with him or teach him or help him or anything, right? And look, there's a reason that the coaching staff changed, right? So, and every player has a destination they do want to go to. You can all kid yourselves and say, hey, I don't want to go there, I don't want to do this. And look, let's not pretend like he hasn't pulled what Shador did in the draft this year and really gone about it the wrong way. He did the process right. And everyone's got feelings. If you ever went for a job interview anywhere, and, in our world, you'd come out of it and say, oh, I'm not sure about that, I don't really want to do that. And you'd have complaints and gripes potentially, but you suck it up. So I wouldn't read too badly into it. And if I was a good organisation and I saw a player of that talent and I knew that I didn't have those issues in my organisation, I'd more than happily take him.
Okay, can't really argue with that. I think you made a very good point. Let's move on to our next three. Of our next 3 quarterbacks to come up. Our first name off the board is Michael Penix Jr., who, of course, was part of our episode last year, where it was him and Kirk Cousins who were the 2 names that made the final 33. Interesting to see where he'll go in this 3. I already know what I'm doing for this one. I've got a pretty good feeling he's going to be my trade, but maybe someone else will come up in this list. Next up, we have the Chargers' Justin Herbert. And then our final quarterback is... It's a very contrasting quarterback here. It could be. We've got Tyler Show. So we have Tyler Show, Herbert, and Penix. I think for me, again, I said Penix might be my trade because I don't see much in him so far potential-wise, but Tyler Show hasn't played a single down in the NFL.
That's it.
And I don't think it's a great pick anyway. I don't watch college football enough, but from all the tape I've watched, I don't think he's a guy I've been blown away by. So I'm going to trade Tyler Show because he's young. And obviously, someone
he's not young.
Yeah,
I think he's older than Penix. I'm not even joking. He's he was at Oregon the same time that Herbert was.
That's insane. That's mental.
He's 20, I think he's 26. I'm pretty sure he's just turned 26.
He's 25. He'll be 26 in
by the start of the year. Yeah.
So, wow. That's insane. But I think it's pretty easy the rest of the way. Penix Jr. I'm going to bench, and Herbert I'm going to start. Ollie, where are you sitting with these 3 quarterbacks?
No, I completely agree. I think that the Saints, it's just, again, it's another relatively poor organisation. I think they put a lot of their chips in on Drew Brees, and I think they've never really accepted that they're going to have to bite the bullet. You know, they went in on Derek Carr, and there's just been a lot of really poor decisions, right, from financial perspective, roster management, trade value, things like that, where actually, like, I think this is the year that maybe they just have to say, we're just going to have to suck. Like, we are just going to have to suck it up and be bad, and really get everything in order. You know, got Alvin Kamara on the books for, I think, for like 15, 20 million, 30-something-year-old running back. He's your best player, right? The Michael Thomas stuff that just dragged on and on and on and on, right? They need to, I think, cut their losses a bit. Look at the young talent they've got. I mean, they got rid of Marshall Lattimore last year, right? For something like a 3rd-round pick. So they are starting to say, look, we've aged out. They lost Ramczyk, you know, at tackle as well. I think the only other sort of tradable commodity they've got is either Brian Barisi on the O-line or D-line even, or Chris Olave, they could definitely get at least a minimum of first, probably some more for that. And I think where the QB situation is, I think he'd welcome a move. So I think they've just got to cut their losses realistically. But yeah, no, I think you're spot on with Penix is going to have to be the one who bench, yeah.
Do you think maybe that's why they took Show? Because I don't think Show is...
We don't have a receiver. They don't have a QB even, sorry. They don't have a QB.
That's the thing. And I think with going for that, and I mean, it wasn't a great quarterback class. Maybe that had a part to play as well. But I do think I don't know whether he's going to declare next year. Will he have to? But Arch Manning is going to be one of the top quarterback prospects. Of course, there's a lot of Louisiana links with the Mannings and Louisiana and New Orleans with his dad, of course, and where I think they grew up in New Orleans as well.
But I think
playing, so maybe that's where they're heading.
There's other things with the Mannings as well that you need to appreciate, right? Okay, they like to stay in school. Okay, they're quite loyal to things. You know, Arch is sat behind Quinn Ewers, who's just gone in the 5th round, right? And everyone's projecting Arch. You know, no one would have blamed Arch for going, right, I'm going to go play at Georgia. Right, I'm not going to sit behind him. I'm going to go start at Georgia for 2 years and then I'm off to the league. Right, okay. You know, and again, like the Mannings, you know, you saw what they pulled with Eli, and having just said what I've said about the Saints as an organisation, how it's run, there's no guarantee that he's going to play for them. Right, okay. He's not necessarily going to be as outright as you know, Shedeur Sanders and stuff, and he'll do the right things and they'll carry themselves the right way. They're the Mannings and stuff like that. But I you know, any team that hedges their bets this year to say I'm going to do that next year, you just never know what's going to happen in the league from, you know, 12 months from now. So you've got to play the season ahead of you with some fail safes. You know, again, you trade Chris Olave for a 1st round. That's an additional 1st round pick. Okay, that's trade capital that you could go do something with, right? You know, say they get rid of Olave, that's a 1st round pick. They've now got 2 1st round picks. Say they do slightly better than they thought they would, and their 10th overall pick, and then they've also got like a late 20s pick or something like that. They can bundle that then to get up to Arch, right? It means they've got good development and they can move up and get him. But if you just say I'm going to tank it or whatever, it's not going to happen.
It's interesting that point you make because of not knowing what happens in a year's time. Because one thing I love doing sometimes is looking back at people's way too early mock drafts. And a year like Gridiron always do. I think Gridiron had a top prospects to look out for prior to the 2019 season. Joe Burrow wasn't even on that top 50 prospects, and Cam Ward was on a lot of mock drafts this time last year, like 15th or 16th, and there's a lot of players that you see on top 3 or top 4 that don't even make it in the first 2 rounds. And I think there's some players that obviously do end up not declaring for the draft and they stay, but it's amazing how much a year changes and how one season. I mean, Quinn Ewers was someone who was on the cover of college football, the college football game a year ago, and he was in the 7th round to us. Yep. It's amazing how much a year changes. Right, let's head on to our next 3 quarterbacks. So our first name off the board, still haven't got either of our starting quarterbacks, our teams yet, but our first name off the board it's going to be a J. Jared Goff is the first off the board. Our next quarterback is going to be this one should be interesting. Anthony Richardson. And then the final player is going to be still no Mahomes, still no Josh Allen. Brock Purdy. Okay, so we have Brock Purdy, Jared Goff, and Anthony Richardson. Ollie, where are you sitting with this?
I'll start obviously by trading away Anthony Richardson. I think he's just done absolutely nothing, right? And you want to talk about Arch Manning and links and stuff like that. That's one to look out for potentially Indianapolis next year. You know, it's just not been good play, but I just don't think there's been glimpses either, right? You know, he's had one really good throw, I think it was against Seattle. It was like, 60-yard bomb or something like that. It's not good enough to, win games, and he hasn't been healthy either. Is a big thing. Now, Goff and Purdy, I'm going to put them in my same bucket as Jalen Hurts, which is where they're good, but they've benefited massively from the rosters and the talent around them. And, Jalen Hurts is probably at the top of that. I think the Brock Purdy contract is absolutely asinine, crazy. And they keep continuing to just chuck money all over the gaff on players in their sort of 30s or whatever. It's ridiculous. No, look, I think I'd probably start Goff. I'd probably bench Purdy, and then I'd trade Richardson. Part of that might be slightly NFC West bias, but
same as you, I've gone for Richardson as my trade because I feel like even though I was big on him going into draft, and then this season I thought he might have a real good resurgence year. I thought he's going to have a Cam Newton kind of year, kind of the body size he had. I thought maybe he might come to his own. Being a fan of the Florida Gators, I thought I was really hard on him, but yeah, a lot's changed. Talk of a lot changing in 12 months. That's one of them. I mean, I think the fact that he tapped out of a game really bothers me. I know that sometimes you got to think your health first, but it just seems to me that he didn't want to be on the field, and that for me as a general coach.
He took himself out of a game at one point, didn't he? He said, "I was tired."
Yeah, and that for me, bonkers. It's so concerning, and that for me is why even more, as well as just the injury record and the performances, that as well just means that I would not really want him on my team compared to these two. Also, I'd rather him than someone like Tyler Show, but I think certainly compared to Jared Goff and Brock Purdy, I think that it's night and day difference. And really, I think if I was going for just purely, if I want to call back for the regular season, I would pick Goff. I think Goff has been brilliant in the Rams and the Lions when it comes to the regular season. But both of them, only one of them has actually, for me, done something when it matters in the playoffs, and that's Brock Purdy. So I'm going to stop Brock Purdy and bench Goff because I think that Goff, as good as he's been, I can't recall any real, apart from maybe the Lions game and the wildcard round a couple of years ago.
Goff's been to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, but that's not down to him. That was never down to him. Purdy,
that's the same with Purdy.
No, Purdy had those drives in that year they made the Super Bowl. The Packers game a massive lead. The Lions game is a perfect example. That Lions game against the Niners, who collapsed Goff? Who had
I'm not. I can't entertain that Brock Purdy led some mad. Christian McCaffrey was the MVP that year.
Yeah, but Purdy made the throws and it matters in the big games.
He made screens. He screened his way.
Goff didn't do that. Goff fumbled the ball in that game.
That's down to O-line maybe more than anything.
But the O-line and line is notoriously quite good. Penei Sewell, great.
The D-line is notoriously quite good on the 49ers. You wouldn't get into the playoffs, like you said, there's not going to be particularly many bad groups of players, essentially.
No, but yeah, that's where I'm at. Let us know in the comments. This could be the most spiciest one of the episode. I want to let you guys in the comments let us know, who would you have as your quarterback, Goff or Purdy? Let us know in the comments. Right. Let's move on to the next three. So we have so far done 15 out of the 33 options. So we're about halfway through the episode so far. As I said before, still some big names to come up. We still haven't had Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen. And the first name we have here is Trevor Lawrence. So that is the first name. He might be an automatic bench already. Who is next on this list? Almost got Mahomes. Then we've got Bo Nix as our second quarterback. And our final quarterback out of the three is... Who's it going to be? We have... a guy that we had a lot of debate on last year, Geno Smith. So we have Trevor Lawrence, Bo Nix, and also Trevor Lawrence. Now, that for me is a bit of a stinky three. I don't think either of them I'd want as my. Bo Nix is probably the exception, so I'll start Bo Nix. I do think he showed potential.
I'd agree.
I'd probably bench Trevor Lawrence and trade Geno Smith. Geno Smith has been fine, but I think the age thing as well. I mean,
I think that's
Lawrence is still fairly young. Nix is young, obviously. Smith has had one good season really in the NFL, so that's my easy three. Ollie, same as me, or are you going differently?
No, I think the same. I think there's a couple of important things there, though. I think I'd like to see sort of a career reset for Trevor Lawrence. I think one thing we've seen actually is it's quite a nice trend across the league, right? Is QBs, super talented QBs who've not panned out well, okay, still got the talent, and someone else has taken them on as a bit of a project. We've already mentioned Darnold. Geno Smith is a prime example of that, right? Jared Goff's another good example of that. I'd like to see the same thing, I think, for Trevor Lawrence, to where it's, he's got a cut bait. It's not worked out in Jacksonville. Unfortunately for him, he's obviously already signed that big contract, so someone would have to take that on or whatever. He's lucky. He's got some talent in Brian Thomas and who they've just taken second overall. There you go, Travis Hunter. I think, look, I would love for him to hit the reset button somewhere, right? And maybe see that late career resurgence. I just think someone like Geno Smith probably is just a bit of a bridge gap at this point in time. Vegas will be in the market for a young QB in the first, probably in 2-3 years' time, something like that.
So let's go on to the next three quarterbacks available. The first name off the board is... Oh no, I've got to take Brock Purdy off. It's Brock Purdy again. I will move him and I'll start again.
You can put him up twice. I'm still not choosing him.
Okay, we've got a big hitter now. We've got Josh Allen is the first name off the board in this particular scenario. Who's next? Joe Flacco. The first of our two Browns quarterbacks. Who is the final one on this list? We've got a rookie in Titans' first overall pick, Cameron Ward. So we've got Josh Allen, Joe Flacco, and Cam Ward. Ollie, you got the honours. Who are you picking first?
I mean, obviously, it's Josh Allen to start. I think he's done tremendously well. I think this is probably going to be the year that he's got the least amount of talent that he's worked with. So it'll be a real test for him. And I think Buffalo's defense has declined a little bit as well. So it really is, he's the moneymaker. I think, obviously with Cam Ward as a rookie, you've got to say trade because, you can't put him above Joe Flacco. I think Joe Flacco, again, is another just sort of one of these guys who's, journeyman. You'd have to put him in the sort of bracket of the Ryan Fitzpatricks of the world. But obviously the difference is, his success with the Ravens is different, and he's just been going around since. I personally think he's going to start for the Browns, Joe Flacco. I know they've said it's between Pickett and Gabriel. I think he'll get some game time. I think he'll start. It's a really weird QB room, over in Cleveland. I think Cam Ward, it'll be really interesting. I don't know where he really ranks amongst sort of other first overall picks at QB. I was particularly blown away by him. I think he was clearly the best QB of that class, but yeah, I think he'd benefit from the Titans needing just someone.
Yeah, I don't think he was a great quarterback. I don't think there's a great class. I think apart from Abdul Carter and Ashton Gianti and maybe a couple of others, I don't think there was, when I was doing my annual quick scramble a week before the draft to find who's good here, who's good there. I didn't find anyone I was that impressed with apart from a few names here and there. But no, certainly he was the best of the bunch. And I will say with all the Shedeur Sanders drama, it's really highlighted the sort of professionalism that Cam Ward has. I mean, there's that clip that's been going around since the draft of, I think Shedeur Sanders wanted to ask him, do you want to record a song? And Cam Ward goes, I just want to play football. And there's definitely, with the whole stuff that went on with Shedeur Sanders and his sort of professionalism and his sort of personality, that gave a lot of red flags to NFL teams. I think Cam Ward,
struck me as the ultimate professional football guy. I know sometimes it's good not to be everything. I think sometimes you do need to have a life outside of the sport. But I was impressed by his sort of attitude. He seemed the least flashy first overall pick ever. I mean, didn't really.
Yeah, there wasn't a ton of buzz about him. Like he wasn't like the top star QB, and he never made real noise at Miami. And they're obviously, he's been drafted off of traits and tangibles that they see for him. I think the whole thing that happened with Shador and Cam this year and stuff, I think it's less so speaking to their personalities in terms of, you said flashy, for example, and stuff like that. Like, I think it's just a degree of, like, it is a professional world. Like, you're not in college, right? As much as college and NIL has influenced it, that's where it's really changing, actually. And I think that's where the interview process is becoming far more important, actually, across all positions in the draft. Because a lot of these coaches really need to figure out, do you like what football brings you, or do you love football, right? That's what they really need to figure out, right? Are you doing this because it's made you $1 million, $2 million, $3 million in college and you've just been good at it? Or does it matter if you made 30 grand or you didn't get paid at all in college and now this is your chance? That's what they're trying to figure out. And that's why, the way Shador went about it with the lack of agent and things like that. That's not to say that Cam Ward blew the interviews out the water. You'd hope he probably did for being the first overall pick or whatever. But just, I think a lot of players need to be advised potentially that this matters now. Like, you've got to show that you like football, and Shador's probably going to be made an example of for a good couple of years.
I think when I watched Cam Ward's the way he behaved in the draft, it reminded me a bit of when the Nuggets won the NBA championship and Jokic said, "I just want to get home." He seemed like he just wanted to get there and get out of there and just spend time with his family and just relax. I don't think he wanted to be there at all. I think he wanted just to get out of there as quick as possible. So let's hold on to our next three names. We've got 12 quarterbacks left. We've got 4 start bench trade scenarios left. So we should get some good names to come. And our first name is a pretty good one. It's CJ Stroud. The first name you'll be picking between. Who is next? So next up, we're going to have either Kenny Pickett or Joe Burrow. It's going to be Joe Burrow. So good start. Joe Burrow, CJ Stroud, and our final quarterback is going to be, cue the drum roll. Okay, I've done it again. I've kept Geno Smith in this list, but I'll start this again. Who's off the name off the board? We have, it's the same as last year. We've got Matt Stafford. So we've got, once again, like last year, we have Matt Stafford and Joe Burrow in the same scenario. And then we've got CJ Stroud as well. Now, last year, I went for Burrow over Stafford. You went for Stafford over Burrow, if I'm right in saying that. What's your stance this year, Ollie?
I mean, yeah, I'd have to flip it this year, I think, obviously, after the year that Burrow had. But also, I think more importantly, sort of the drop-off that Stafford had this season, but just wasn't particularly good. It showed. I mean, look, they were still a playoff team, but a lot of that goes down to McVay. I think, look at where they invested in the draft as well last year. It was very much defense. They put a lot in the defense, which tells you all you kind of need to know, which is needed to take some of the pressure off of Stafford. I'm sure Joe Burrow is probably wishing the same thing was happening with him a little bit. But yeah, I think, look, Joe Burrow has clearly established himself as an elite player. He's very much suffering a bit of Drew Brees syndrome, where can't have a defense to save his life where it matters, and he can put up all-star numbers. And then, yeah, CJ Stroud. I mean, for me, I'm going to be trading Stafford. I'm going to be benching CJ Stroud, and now obviously going to be starting Joe Burrow. I think, look, CJ Stroud's just an ascending player. Again, he had a bit of a down year last year, but, if you were asked between the two, you'd want to keep CJ Stroud at this point.
See, it's interesting. It depends how you look at it. If I'm looking at this season coming up alone, in a big moment, who would I rather, Stafford or Stroud on the bench? It'd probably be Stafford, because I think Stafford offers that leadership. He
I think he still has 1 or 2 years left. I think he can still. I think this year, especially with the players that Rams have on rookie contracts, I think Stafford could have one final great run at trying to get a Super Bowl once again. But if that's to me, who do I want to bench or trade? I think Burrow is the obvious start. I think Burrow for me is top 3 quarterback in the league. But I think since Stafford and Stroud, if you ask me who I want to have a franchise for the next 10 years, it would obviously be Stroud because of the age factor and then the talent he has. So I'm a bit stuck between the two. So do I bench Stafford or do I bench Stroud? Because obviously Stroud has the trade value more than Stafford. I think you get a lot for Stroud if you try to trade him over Stafford. But Stroud also has been doing what he's doing with a bad O-line. So it's tough because I love Stafford. I'm a big fan of his.
I think the other thing just to consider as well, and across all of these picks, the AFC is a lot better than the NFC, right? It just is. You look at the teams that are in the AFC. If you did a 1v1 at AFCs versus NFCs, the AFC would absolutely decimate them, right? It's a very hard division. Granted, Stroud's played in a pretty potato one at the moment. There's no competition. You'd be shocked if they lost the division this year. But, Matt Stafford, again, the NFC West, I'm biased. The NFC West is a tough division. It has been for quite a few years. San Fran, Seattle, Arizona is coming back. And then you've got, but the rest of it, it's not compared to the AFC. So I think if you bear that in mind as well, and I think also if you swapped their roles, I think if you put CJ Stroud in LA and you put Stafford in Texas, I think that would tell you the story itself. I think CJ Stroud would absolutely go crazy.
So I kind of agree, but I think Stafford proved that in the Lions for many years in a bad team, he was able to still perform. But
he's a lot younger. He's a lot younger than different guy.
That is true. I mean, you have swayed me. I think I will trade Stafford and bench Stroud because, I do think what I've seen from him in multiple playoff games, especially that first year he had, incredibly clutch in those moments. And then even the season just gone, he had some good moments. The win over the Chargers was a surprise to many, I think, after how bad the O-line was. But yeah, still for me, Burrow, the guy. I mean, I think that's definitely the best quarterback season I've seen from a guy not to make the playoffs. I can't think of any quarterback season. I mean, in fact, he got MVP. I got a feeling he got one vote. I've got a feeling one person voted for him in the MVP race. I could be wrong on that. I know he was one of the 5 nominees in the end of the season. I've got a feeling he got one vote. But to get that, if that is the case, to get that for a team that had a 9-8 record, did make the playoffs, I think goes to show the record he has. And I think Burrow, for me, if he was on any other team who had a functional defense, had a functional O-line, he'd be sitting here with a ring. I think it's pretty easy. I mean, he almost won a Super Bowl with the most sacked record, or he was the most sacked quarterback in postseason history, most sacked quarterback, or tied most sacked quarterback in Super Bowl history alongside Roger Staubach. The fact he did that, and imagine what he could do with a good O-line and a good defense. I think that would be scary for the league. So let's go back to our next 3 players. We've got 9 quarterbacks left. Who is first off the board? I did actually forget Justin Fields, so I've now added him to the pile. And here he is. Funny, I just mentioned him. He's just joined the party. Justin Fields is the first name off the list. Of course, he is the new starting quarterback with the New York Jets. The next one is Mason Rudolph. Of course, right now, the starting quarterback for the Steelers. Whether he will be in week 1 is another question in itself. Who is our third quarterback? I'm hoping for the sake of the episode, it's someone not that good. And it is. It's Kenny Pickett. We have the Mount Rushmore of terrible quarterback selections.
Well, Steelers QBs.
We have Kenny Pickett. Of course, all 3 of them. Justin Fields, Rudolph, and Kenny Pickett might have all been in the same...
potentially in the same room. Yeah. That's a second, yeah.
Now... Okay, so I'm going to go. That is an awful... I mean, I'm glad we've got it because it is actually quite a tough decision. I'm going to go... I'm going to start Fields. Bench Mason Rudolph. Or do I start Rudolph? Because Rudolph has done just as much as Fields in his career when you think about it.
I don't think he has. I don't think he has.
I think he's gone to the playoffs, which feels.
Oh look, Andy, I think there's only one team that's made a move for one of those QBs and paid them 20 million a year, right? Like the league tells you what to think of certain players. Yeah, if Mason Rudolph was better than Justin Fields, the Jets would have signed him for 20 million a year. They'd have signed Kenny Pickett for 20 million a year. So, you know, I'm not the biggest Justin Fields fan, not because of anything personal or anything like that. Just, you know, I just don't think he's particularly great at football. But he is obviously better than the likes of Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph. Credit to Mason Rudolph. God knows what he's got to have bad picks of Tomlin or something to still be in that building. And then, yeah, obviously Kenny Pickett over at Cleveland. But yeah, I mean, I think, again, talking about resurgences earlier and stuff like that, it'd be interesting to see what happens with Justin. But, you know, he has had that shot at in Pittsburgh. And I think the thing is with Pittsburgh is that actually, if there was ever an organization that could really help someone out, you know, from a cultural perspective, from a team building perspective, from a grit perspective, probably would have been the Steelers. But if I remember right, he was doing quite well. And they said, no, we're still going Russ. We're still going to play Russ. So maybe he's been done a bit dirty there.
Do you think that, because there's a lot of bad backups that win Super Bowls but don't play, do you think Kenny Pickett is the worst quarterback to play in the Super Bowl they've won? Because I'm thinking of the obvious one we go to is Trent Dilfer, but you know, most times the backups don't play in the Super Bowl because the games are close. You know, you rarely see. I can't think of anyone worse than him to actually have played in the Super Bowl.
I'd have to double check who was backing up Russell Wilson in Super Bowl 48 when the Seahawks just absolutely decimated the Broncos. Because that's the only other reason they're getting in, right? Is that, I mean, Brock Purdy is a great example, actually, as a backup who's played in the QB. Played in Super Bowl as a bad QB. But yeah, Broncos Super Bowl 48.
Yeah, because I'm guessing this one I actually didn't watch. I only watched the first quarter.
43. This was before I really started to get into the sport.
Yeah, I'm the same as you. I watched about the first quarter. It was that bad. I thought, I can't watch this. And back then,
it was bad.
I was still anti the adverts back at that point in 2014.
Yeah. But then you start to get into the adverts and they're good.
Yeah.
As long as you buy into it.
That's the thing. I said it before in the podcast, but once I watched Patriots Falcons, it might be either Patriots Falcons or Patriots Eagles.
Or the comeback or whatever.
I think it was. I still fast forwarded the adverts and all that. Like I watched it behind time in Falcons Patriots. But the following year, when I caught up and wasn't tired to go to bed, I watched it with the adverts, and that's the game. And I realised that I could actually really enjoy it with the adverts. So back in Seahawks Broncos, I think that is the worst Super Bowl I've ever. I think that is the worst Super Bowl of this century. The
backups on that Broncos roster were someone called Zach Dysert that I've never heard of, Brock Osweiler. So I don't know if Brock Osweiler played in that Super Bowl, but at 48-3. Well, I suppose no. Actually, I tell you what, no, because actually the losing teams never put the backups in, do they? I'm looking at the wrong team. I want to see.
Yeah, I was going to say the Seahawks won that one. My guess is Matt Flynn, but I don't know.
Let's see.
I don't know if he was the guy originally brought in before they drafted
Tarvarius Jackson.
I'd never heard of that guy. So so did he actually get a snap, or was he just part of the team?
I don't know. He might. I think he was part of the team. But you'd think at 48-3 they took Russ out, surely?
Or they just ran the ball with like a backup run back. I don't know. Frankly, I don't think I've ever really wanted to watch that game back, if I'm honest. So we'll never know. But if you are watching or listening to this episode, let us know who you think is the worst ever quarterback.
He did
play the Super Bowl that they win.
He did come in and play.
He did. Okay, so I think that's probably one of the ones we have to think about. Obviously, Trent Dilfer is the classic one everyone goes to. You could argue for their careers, Nick Foles, but I think Nick Foles did a lot more than.
Oh, come on. That's so hard considering what he did in that.
He is the Michu of the NFL. He is the one season wonder that we all love to see.
Incredible.
Let's face it, he was terrible. He had maybe that one playoff run the following year when they had the double doink, but
I disagree. I have to disagree because he had a decent career before he even joined the Eagles. And then that playoff run was just different. But yes.
Right. So we have 2 left to go. We still have our quarterbacks left: are Tua Tagovailoa, Patrick Mahomes, Jaden Daniels, JJ McCarthy, Baker Mayfield, and Kyler Murray. So we've got still some big names to choose from. They're all big hitters, really, left. Apart from McCarthy, you could argue because he hasn't yet played a snap in the NFL. But who is first off the list? It's going to be either mine or your quarterback. The next is Tua Tagovailoa. Is the first off the board. Our next up is going to be. I'm hoping we get Kyler Murray just to have both.
So do I.
Well, this one might be the easiest start of the whole list. Our next player is Patrick Mahomes. And then finally, our next quarterback is going to be. This one is going to be made really easy. Our final one is McCarthy. I think for me, it's pretty easy. I think you bench McCarthy. I think personally he's going to light up this year, but he's yet to actually play a snap.
I don't know. I think coming off that injury as well, that's tough. I think
you've seen
Minnesota have been incredibly bold, is what they've been.
I think that we've seen what they could do with Darnold, what that offense can do for quarterback, and I think McCarthy benefited from good weapons at Michigan, from everything I've read, and he's going to have the same again in Minnesota. You've got Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson, you've got Aaron Jones to hand the ball off to. You've got an amazing defense with Brian Flores, who can, keep you off the field at times and, help you win games. If you're having a bad game, you can rely on that defense to help to bail you out. And I think McCarthy, personally, I think he could be in line for a good year, personally. But yeah, you're right. The injury could be a factor, but maybe a year off was all he needed. And I think the rest is pretty easy. Holmes, you start because he is the best quarterback in the league, the best of this current era of quarterbacks. And then Tua bench because he's a good quarterback, not a great quarterback, and he's had some good moments. So that is a pretty easy start bench trade. Ollie, do you concur?
Yeah, I do. I think you might have been generous to call him a good QB, but we'll see. No, I think the McCarthy one's quite an interesting way. And I was just thinking in my head, like, why wouldn't they have kept Darnold and let him develop behind off an injury and all that kind of stuff? And I just think it's a really tough spot for them to actually be in. And what they gave up to get McCarthy, it has to come to fruition at some point.
So we might have left our best selection for last. We've got Jaden Daniels, Baker Mayfield, and Kyler Murray. Now, Ollie, you are the Cardinals fan in this room, so I'm going to let you go first. But I think that is actually a really hard one to call. I think, particularly, I think two of them, particularly, I think is a really tough choice. How are you seeing it?
I think they're all quite tough choices. I think, it'll break my heart, but I think it's hard not to put Jaden Daniels as the starter just off of last year. And it's interesting because obviously they've all shared, like Cliff Kingsbury as a coordinator at some point in their careers as well. So you can sort of relatively judge them the same. I think the difference is that Kyler's never really benefited from a fantastic coach and roster. That's not to say that Baker has, and that's not to say that Jaden Daniels has, but that's always been my sort of barometer for him. I think this year is, though, the make or break for Kyler. Like, everything is set up for him now. Went 8-9 last year. Or 9 8-9, I think it was 8-9. Yeah, 8-9 last year. Just missed out on the playoffs when they really should have made it. There's no excuse this year. Right? They've got all the weapons that they needed on offense. They've absolutely pummeled the defense with talent. The expectation is playoffs, and then it's on guy like, can you do a playoff win as well? Because that's the big elusive thing for him, and the biggest criticism for him. The one national televised playoff game he had against LA, it wasn't necessarily his fault, but we were awful. And obviously, when it's on TV like that, that's what happens. And then Jaden Daniels has won one. Baker Mayfield's one of these guys who's had his resurgence, like I said, with other guys, which is fantastic to see. Seems to be that Carolina is the place to stop over for, just before you start doing something decent. I'm gonna start Jaden based on the fact that he's obviously done very well. It'll be interesting to see what happens in sophomore year. They're obviously going to go up against better competition. NFC East, Eagles obviously always going to be a contest for them. Cowboys, I don't think will be particularly competitive this year. And then, Kyler, like I said, I've already said he's really got to step up. The scoring stuff's the big one, and just the decision making. I think they were quite conservative last year, just in terms of play calling, running. Big emphasis on running the ball, controlling the clock, controlling possessions because of how bad the defense was. I think this year he's going to have a bit more free reign to say, cut it loose. If something goes wrong, the defense can dig in and do something about it. And then also there'll be less pressure. You don't have to go get a massive lead because the defense is going to give it up or whatever. So there's that. And then I think that Baker is what he is now. Right? I think we've probably realised what he is for his career. Having been around a couple of different teams. So start Daniels, bench Kyler, and then trade Baker.
Interesting. Okay, so I've also gone for Daniels to start, but I've gone for benching Baker. Nothing against Kyler Murray, but I just think Baker Mayfield, I always been a big fan of his. I have been for years, and I just feel like Baker can offer something. I think obviously Daniels is the guy you start. He looks to me like the next guy. I've seen it with Lamine Yamal watching football this year, and I think Daniels watching that playoff run, particularly that Lions game, was just something that I've not seen. I mean, I had a similar feeling when Stroud played the year before in that playoff game when they shot the I can't think who they beat now in the wildcard round 2 seasons ago. But Daniels for me, it just to beat up the Lions that badly was such an impressive performance for QB. And one of the best ever rookie seasons I can remember from a quarterback. So fully aware this is one season, and I'm fully aware that Stroud had some struggles in the second year. A lot of quarterbacks do, but he may not have the struggles. He may just go on and have a great second year. So Daniels, Baker Mayfield, he has something for me. I think you could definitely have him on the bench. And if Daniels went down, I think I trust Baker more than Kyler when it comes to if Daniels went down injured in the game, and I'd bring someone off the bench, and then Kyler still has some value. Trade him. But there we are. So we will put our selections in total on socials, on the graphics, so you can all have a look at our picks in total. But that is where we'll end the episode. So Ollie, first of all, thank you for coming on.
No, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Well, always good having you on, mate. And all the best with the London Blitz and everything going on there at the moment.
Yeah, it should be good. Also got the GB under-19s as well. We're playing a couple of games in September coming up. We've got blue and white scrimmage coming up in August as well. Or July, I should say, actually. So, look, really good. Always good to be involved in football. Always good to talk football. Listen to me ramble on. Enjoy it, mate.
Good stuff. So, that is the end of our Across the Pod NFL podcast. Start, bench, trade, quarterback edition. I have been, as ever, your host, Andy Davis, with our guest today, Ollie Kent, and we'll see you guys next time.